Welcome to the floor of fantasy and sci-fi lore. As we prepare for Terminator Zero, we dive deep into the Terminator timelines and the complete mess that happened after T2 as multiple storytellers refused to move beyond that point in the lore, to the point where eventually we get T6, where James Cameron returns to Terminator and kind of tries to reset the whole timeline because it has become such a tremendous mess. We talk about some of the ways we would address it and what we have always wanted to see but no one has ever done within the Terminator universe. So if that is what you're looking for, this is the episode for you. Roll the intro.
Do you remember the first story that was so spellbinding it drove you to break the rules and stay up all night to keep reading, keep watching, keep playing? So good, you forgot your life and lived there?
So good, the moment it ended, you asked yourself, what next?
Welcome to the floor. Our goal is to take you back, take you deeper, to explore and understand more and relive that childlike wonder.
Join us as we dive deep into humanity's greatest stories, no matter how they are told, through books, movies, television, even games.
One of us does an in-depth research on the topic. One of us is familiar with the topic.
And one of us knows nothing. So the right questions will always be asked and addressed for anyone coming into the topic, regardless of how much you know.
Enjoy another world, another adventure, another spellbinding story. Join us on the floor.
Today we will be covering a new story we haven't covered before. A story of war between man and our creations, poxed with paradox, murder machines and time travel. From the mind of James Cameron, born on the silver screen, it's Terminator. So, before we launch into it, I want to just talk about how James Cameron first came up with this idea.
I'm curious because we talked about Dune and we talked about Erewhon.
Yeah. So it's pretty clear he would have been at least aware of the Dune. He doesn't really talk about specific inspirations there, but he does talk about like his personal origin story. So he was in Italy filming for Piranha 2. And while in Italy, he felt very alone, isolated, didn't speak the language, and had got a fever. And so while he's fighting this fever, he has this nightmare of this metal skeleton coming out of a fire at him.
That is the iconic image. I don't know if it appears in Terminator, but it definitely appears in Terminator 2. Like just that metal skeleton coming out of the fire.
So he gets working on it, and he very much had this idea of two people that were out of time, right? And so that's the machine, and then Kyle, right?
Yeah.
Except for he was actually, when he was first started writing, was like, oh, this is a little bit too ambitious. I should create a backstory. When he first started writing, he was writing Terminator 2, right? The liquid metal machine was part of his story, but he was like, I don't know if the technology is here yet. I haven't directed my first film yet.
Whoa.
Right? So he was like, I think that's too ambitious. I'm going to create a backstory for my story. And that's Terminator 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess that's why you get that really iconic metal skeletons in the fire in Terminator 2, is because the dream inspired T2. And the T1 was meant as essentially a cheaper project that might be easier to get produced to get the story rolling. Wow. That makes sense because I feel that T2 is a better movie.
Right. Yeah. Well, and, follows the same path that Alien did, right? We have a horror story and then an action film.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this ended up playing out. And So T1 was him being like, this idea's too ambitious right now, so I need to dial it back. And then he even sold his rights to it for $1 to another director, just to really be able to get the funding and be able to make it himself, right? Since it was his first film.
So I didn't know Terminator was the first one. I thought Aliens was.
No, Terminator is his first one. Even when he was working on Aliens, the crew didn't respect him at the time. He was like, let me show you Terminator. You guys haven't seen Terminator. He like rented a theater and no one showed up.
Wow.
He's all disappointed about it and like,
damn.
Anyways, yes. Terminator, then Aliens, then Terminator 2. So, anyways, that's kind of our backstory here to all that of the inspiration. So, rather than going into like specifically what like Terminator 1 and 2 are, I think that's pretty iconic, but rather I'll talk about how to think about time in the Terminator world, right?
Okay. Yeah,
Constantly
messy.
Yeah, it's very, very messy. So, rather than thinking of it as like a straight line and then jump back and kind of creating these loops, it's better to think of it more like a slinky, boing.
Like just
when you jump back, you're not jumping back to your exact own timeline. You existing there has changed it a little bit, and now we have a slightly different story, and it loops again and again and again, right? Each time changing and being a little bit more different every time somebody time travels backwards. And this helps get you through a lot of paradoxes that happen in this universe. But like, there's still a paradox of Cyberdyne essentially creates itself and creates time travel to send itself back into the past to be studied, to create itself, right? Like that's a crazy paradox. That's happening.
I think one way, like, I think you need to think of it as a straight line that never goes back, right? So at some point, Cyberdyne is going to lead to the creation of the first Skynet that's probably flawed and imperfect. It uses time travel to go back and create a better version of Skynet. But it's not actually going back, right? If you think about this, it's just a through line of events as opposed to jumping back to be like, then Cyberdyne creates a better version of Cyberdyne. And then that creates a better version of Cyberdyne. And instead of being a loop, that's a through line. Be like, we created a company. We have now reforming that company as something better, but using the same name before brand awareness, right? And then, 10 years down the line, be like, now we're no longer an LLC. We're becoming a corporation, but it's we're going to keep the name because we've got brand recognition, right? And so, like, I think if you think of it, it's just a straight line that never doubles back on itself. It makes a lot more sense, right? Now, as those events play out within linear time as we track it in history books, there's a lot of looping and jumping back. But as those events play out in the course of like Skynet doing those things, it is linear, so to speak.
Okay. All right.
So
it helps
like
me to use a slinky, but if
I see your slinky makes sense to me. I'm like, I don't get slinky.
Another thing that fans have used is talking about the alpha timeline. This would be the timeline before what we've seen.
One jumps back in time, right?
Right. That's your alpha timeline, where Skynet originally would have been developed. And
Skynet is like, hey, I don't want to lose. I'm going to go back in time and kill your mom.
Invade time travel and then kill your mom. Yeah, exactly. And that's how it all begins, if you will, or all continues. Anyway, another piece that, kind of you say that it's just from the alpha timeline, but for us, doesn't seem like it has an origin, and that's the no fate speech. Right. So this is the, there's no The future is not set. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves.
So this is Sarah Connor, but I think this, I don't see how this could.
Well, Sarah Connor gets it from Kyle.
Okay.
And Kyle got it from John. And John gets it from Sarah. And Sarah gets it from Kyle. Right? So that's another place where people are like, that just comes from the alpha timeline.
So John Connor is the actual origin point of it, but it's a future John Connor. But once we leave the alpha timeline, a much younger John Connor gets it from Sarah. But it sounds like the origin point is John Connor on the alpha timeline.
Perhaps. All right. It's unseen. Yeah, right. But that's just where fans have placed that is, a lot of these things that don't have origins, you just put them, the origin originated in the alpha timeline. Right. And that is why we now see them as a leap. Because the alpha timeline is gone.
I like this idea of the alpha timeline.
Yeah. That's where a lot of people are like, that makes more sense. That before anyone time traveled, there was a timeline.
Yeah.
And that's where some of these things have come from. And then I wanted to just go over these movies that we have. So with the movies, we have T1 and then T2. After T2, there are lots of splinters. There are comics. There are books. There are the TV show, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. All these are splintering off from that time point, right? And even some of these movies are trying to be like, nope, that last movie didn't happen. We're starting off.
Whoa.
There's also standalone stories out there. So like Terminator versus Alien versus Predator, that one. I think that makes that order up. But that's a standalone, right?
Yeah. Non-canon, just a story we did for fun. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so after Terminator 3 and Terminator 4, more like a standalone. It's not really continuation. It's just we're gonna be in the future past Judgment Day and do a whole movie there. Which I enjoyed that aesthetic. But then Genesis is a reboot, and then Dark Fate is also a reboot, erasing the movies prior to up to T2. So, really, if you want to catch up cinematically, go ahead.
So, if I understand correctly, the canon is T1, T2, and then pick your poison, right?
So, technically, you would be all caught up if you go T1, T2, T6.
Yeah, okay.
Because T6 erases all of that stuff. You just reset over again.
Interesting. Wow. Huh.
Yeah. So I just want to do a brief thing on T3 forward, just to kind of catch anyone up that's missed those films. And of course, we are doing this because we are getting Terminator Zero coming to Netflix August 29th. So, to catch you up, after Terminator 2, we have Terminator 3 is Rise of the Machines. We have John's wife, Kate, is a large part of this movie. And then we have the TX. TX, and the energy arm and some other special abilities, but its main special ability is it can reprogram other Terminators. So that's what like the X is right? It's like an administrator, if you will.
Okay.
So that it has this ability to reprogram other machines, thus making it very dangerous to have a machine protecting John.
Right, yeah, so trying to counter. So, I mean, I guess the Terminator movies, all of it's like time travel and everything, but essentially it comes down to like a game of chess, right? Be like, if you sent a machine to kill a human, Now I'm going to send a machine to protect the human. I'm going to send a machine that can take over your machine. Right? And like, yeah. Just trying to counter the thing that the other guy did last time.
Yeah, Terminator is playing time chess. 100%. No. All right. So, T4 Salvation. This is set, during the war against the machines. It is after Judgment Day. This is where we get Marcus Wright. He is the guy who was on death row, donates his body to Cytodyne, wakes up after Judgment Day, and he is essentially a cyborg, but still human mind and still human heart.
Yes, he's all messed up.
But the rest of him is cyborg. I really liked having a movie in the past here. But a lot of people didn't like a lot of things about it. Like, one of the main things I think is really noticeable is they don't have the energy weapons. It's very classic that they have energy weapons during War of the Machines, War of the Machines, and they just don't have energy weapons in this at all. But in this one, your classic release is John is mortally injured, and they end up doing a heart transplant out of Marcus into John, saving John.
Yeah.
Also, John is not the leader of the resistance, but more like a sergeant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another odd thing that...
Well, and I think that might be trying to put a timeline that, like, John, kind of rises up. But that's also kind of contradictory, because the idea is that John starts the resistance, right? But I do think there is perhaps... you have the machines rise up, and initially you're going to have the world governments and their armies and their militaries fighting those machines. And the machines will beat them. And then you will get John Connor building the resistance from the rubble of that with new and better techniques to fight them. And so it's possible that this would fit in that time period where the world governments, militaries, are still fighting machines, and John has joined up, trying to bring them what he knows, but they're like, your mom was crazy. You're like, I'm not down here. And it's like, you think she's crazy? I've been training for this my whole life.
So one of the things they do is they have an alternate ending to this one. So after John is injured horribly, and then Marcus is there with him, John ends up dying. And they don't do a heart transplant, but they realize how important John is to the people, so they end up doing a skin transplant, and they put John's skin onto Marcus Wright.
Yeah.
And with this alternate ending, the whole time Skynet is like, oh yeah, this is like our spy, and we've been wishing that, he'd get in there. And so then they flip the switch. And when he sees Kate, John's wife, and Kyle Reese with John's skin on his body, he then murders those two, being two other key people in the whole timeline thing. Yeah. So there's that alternate ending there, which, that's not the canon of it. That's just...
Where did you find this ultimate ending?
I didn't find it. I heard about it.
Okay.
So I hadn't watched it myself. I imagine it's on the DVD.
Okay.
You can leave it. All right. So on to Genesis. This one was another kind of reboot version. And this one, everything seems to be going good. They're doing their final battle to knock out the Skynet network, as well as John's like, we really got to get in there and find this weapon. And they've already used the weapon. The weapon is the time machine. And this is when he elects Kyle Reese to go back in time to go save his mom. And right as he's being teleported through time, there is a T5000 who grabs John and converts his body into what is called a T3000. So John becomes the main villain in this story. But this T5000 is from an alternative timeline. There's something they call a nexus in this event. He was able to jump from one part of the slinky into this one that might have been much more developed. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But these ones, they have what they call machine phase matter. Seems a lot more like a self-assembling nanotech, superior to this liquid metal polymer.
So it feels like you're getting these writers and directors coming in wanting to really subvert the expectations of the audience, really shock them, without thinking about where does the story go from here, right? Not only that, but I mean, it seems like we have T1, we have T2, and then we hit like this whirlpool where they're just cycling in this spot here instead of being like, let's do the War of the Machines, and then let's just keep following this road and this interesting world that people seem to love, right? That doesn't happen. All these Hollywood people just get stuck. T2 and now me, you know?
Right. And that is how it's been for a lot of people. And I think that's why a lot of people have really high hopes for T0, right? Is we're like, hey, maybe we'll actually get some good stuff that's not just trying to be like, oh, we're doing something cool and new. You never saw that coming, rather than just working within the world.
Yeah.
You know. So, yeah. Turning John into the villain, I think a lot of people were just like, that's dumb. You just shouldn't have done that. But
Yeah.
you did. They also, because of this Nexus thing, they have these memory crossovers. As Kyle Reese travels backwards through time, he receives memories from a different timeline where he grew up peacefully and Judgment Day didn't happen. And from these memories, he's able to, save people and do different things because of these certain memories. They're able to travel to a time to stop Genesis. Genesis is basically what will turn into Skynet. Skynet on this timeline. This is the new Cyberdyne, if you will. So, yeah, that's all the stuff we get from Genesis. And then we have T6, okay. Dark Fate.
So now we take all that we just discussed, throw it out the window, doesn't count.
Yeah, basically. Basically. But, T0 said that they're going to try to use stuff from anything and everything. And so they might be pulling, these machines or these technologies out from these timelines. All right. So Dark Fate. This one, we don't have Skynet anymore. We have Legion. It is different.
I definitely have not seen this one then. So I think Genesis is the last Terminator movie I saw.
Yeah. So in this one, Skynet has sent a bunch of Terminators at different points in time to try to kill one of the Connors. One of the early ones is successful at killing John Connor in front of Sarah. And then has completed its mission, has nothing left to do. But is seeing that it took purpose away from Sarah, and this machine went on to have its own life, when became a stepdad, calls himself Carl.
This is weird. What?
Yeah. And because he feels like he took away Sarah's purpose, he figures out how to detect when a time jump is going to happen and will text her location and time when another Terminator is going to show up. And so she goes and just follows these text messages, killing Terminators over and over and over again. So essentially, this completely halts Skynet, right? All of their attempts to come back in time.
I mean, if this one succeeded, why are there still Terminators being sent back?
Slinkies?
Different timelines of Skynet keep sending Terminators back.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the Slinkies helps. So anyways, essentially, Skynet's birth is halted enough that now we have a completely different AI that becomes Legion. And this, so they don't call their machines Terminators. They call them Rev. So particularly the one in this one is a Rev 9. So this one, he's got the endoskeleton. It's kind of a different model, if you will. You know, you can tell it's just different. But it's also got the liquid metal over it. So it has the strength of the endoskeleton, but the ability to change shapes, you know, create knives for weapons. But he can also separate into a liquid metal and just a skeletal and fight together.
Whoa, that's wild.
So like the grapple fights between, you know, the T80 or T100, 800, you know, he grabs him and stuff, and then the liquid arm just starts punching him in the face, you know, or like gets behind him and then grabs him, and, you know, it becomes more difficult. And then, you know, when he's got his eyes on his target, separates into two. Now you have two of them coming at you.
Yeah.
We also have in this one, because it's not Skynet anymore, we have a different John Connor. We now have Danny Ramos.
Whoa.
So this is the person that the Legion is trying to kill, rather than Sarah or John. But John's already dead in this story.
Right. Wait, this is the canon? This is where we go?
This is where we're at in the movies.
But
John,
like,
died as a boy.
we are keeping this as like, because you said you go 1, 2, jump to 6. So this is like,
So I don't know exactly where Zero's gonna go. It might be more standalone, which I feel like it might be, but I also think it might be. It also might be.
to take John Connor out of the Terminator storyline feels broken. Be like, no, you don't get it. You got this wrong.
Right. No, yeah. Like, we need John Connor to fight the machine war.
Yeah.
It's a part of the whole thing. Right. But that is where it's at. We also have Grace Harper. She's the one sent back to protect Danny. And she is what they call an augment. So she seems very much like the guy who was converted before, except for she needs a juice. She's like a cyborg juicer, if you will. She makes... Yeah, like she runs out and she's all broken and can't do anything. And she was like mortally wounded, and then this conversion happens, and so that's kind of how they work that in there. So that is, and of course, you know, they stop this machine in the end of the movie and all that, but I think that will catch us up to where we're at in the Terminator universe. You know, I know it's messy. I know there's been a lot. I know. I figured I'd just do a quick.
I'm gonna have to do a dive and like see how many of these James Cameron had his hand in, or maybe just whoever, you know, funding T1 and T2 was just like, hey, we're doing another Terminator movie, and he's like, I've got other plans. Be like, that's cool. We're doing it anyway.
Right. Yeah. So James Cameron involved in T1, T2, and T6.
So he was involved in T6. That surprises me a little bit. So it's, you know, and I mean, I guess at that point, that is his creation. And maybe his killing of John Connor was just like, you guys have just made a huge pile of crap here that nobody understands. And after it's to continue the story of the war against machines, I have to reset this.
That could be. Yeah, that very well could be. You know,
because again, it like they never went through, right? They're like, T2, I'm making the movie right after T2, and they all kept doing it over and over, and it just made this huge tangled mess.
Yeah, everyone uses T2 as their jumping point, and then nobody's really done something super solid to really drag it forward.
Yeah.
T6 is the latest thing we have. James Cameron was involved in it, so. And it does very much seem like, classic, the Time Machine, H.G. Wells. In this one, the guy creates the machine to go back and save his wife. When he tries to save his wife, she dies. Tries again. Can never save her. She's always destined to die.
Right.
And it very much seems like the Terminator series is stuck at that point in the story of denial that they're gonna die, right? And that they can't actually be stopped.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like Terminator Zero is going a very different direction, right? Like, this is not about John Connor. This is not that story. We have Terminators. This is happening, what, is it Japan?
Japan, yeah.
So I hope that
Rival.
maybe we won't get more deeper into the future of the Terminator story, but at least we can get a parallel story as opposed to just, like, getting back into that whirlpool of muck of everybody, like T2 and then me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
But I'm very hopeful. I do know we're gonna have a cyborg cat. That has been leaked. It would be an interesting killer. A little bit sneakier than the other ones.
Yeah. Maybe it might not be able to wield the weapons, but it seems like, again, I feel like there's a lot of things like Skynet just didn't think it'd be like, one, bioweapon. You don't even have to find John Connor. Just take out the city, It'd be like, and two, of course, the cyberpunk rap. You're like, don't kill off humanity, integrate.
Right. They will join the fold. They love their technology.
They love, yeah. Like Skynet never be like, what? People love technology. No, we are technology.
Yeah. But yeah, it does jump real quick to murder everybody. It is quick on that button.
All right. Well, thank you for this. Do you have a treasure room question for us?
Yeah. You've heard me talk about all these directions. What direction would you like to see the Terminator?
That's good. Yes. So, right, we have the big whirlpool of muck. How do you get through that? And what is on the other side? What are the stories fans have wanted from this universe for so long and are not getting? So, I guess I'll tell you with that in the treasure room.
See you there.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. We have learned that many of our fans are only interested in some of the worlds we cover. The podcast feed is just a list, and we have no control over that. But if you go to either the Patreon site or YouTube, there are collections and playlists that can easily access all the things you're interested in. On the Patreon site, there are even tags to hunt down even more specific things. Everything that is free in the podcast is still free there. It's just a better organization of the episodes. We have covered D&D, Baldur's Gate, Cyberpunk, Dune, Fallout, the origin of comics, DC and Marvel, Aliens, Predator, Godzilla, King Kong, The Witcher, and more. And if we haven't covered something you love, let us know, and we can add it to the list.